Welcome everyone to Iron Farmer 2025. This is the first workshop, and Friedrich and I are very excited that we are here with the first workshop on rpact. So we're going to have an exciting program for you today, and we're going to introduce ourselves first, and then we'll show you a little bit what we have planned for this workshop. And of course, feel free to drop questions in the chat anytime you have. And yeah, there's also a little website. I think the others are going to share the website URL in the chat, so you can also get all of the materials, of course, later for yourself. So you can get all the slides, you can get all the code. Of course, the workshop will be recorded, and then after a few weeks or so, they will be available on YouTube. So you can also go back to the workshop later and try everything out that we showed you here, maybe a little bit quickly. So don't worry and sit back and relax and enjoy the workshop. So that's kind of first start. And yeah, so let's get started with rpact. And again, just starting with a quick introduction. Maybe you don't know us yet. Maybe you don't know where we're from. So this is actually a very exciting workshop because this is actually the first time, as far as I know, that there is a public rpact workshop. So it's kind of the first time we offer this workshop in public here, and it's even for free. So I think we're very happy to have you here. Of course, also happy for feedback afterwards and so on, what we can improve. I'm sure there's a lot we can improve because it's the first time of anything. You can improve a lot. So any feedback is also very welcome. As mentioned, feel free to ask questions at any time using the Zoom Q&A or the chat function. And actually now I'm gonna try something. We didn't really plan it too much, so let's see if it will work out. So I put a few questions in the Zoom poll, and we're gonna try to start a Zoom poll just to um, just to see who you are. So maybe if one of the other backstage hosts can help me a little bit how to do that, that would also
Yep.
be great. So that's
S-
Phil, do
So
you?
if you look at the bottom, it should have polls and quizzes, and I'm just going to ahead and launch it for you, Daniel, if that's okay.
Great. Yeah, that would be super great.
And it just
Yes,
popped up.
it just popped up exactly. So please just fill out those few questions for us. So the first question is, what is your experience with R? So the from one low experience, just starting, to five super experienced. So you can just click on that. Then the second question is, what is your experience with clinical trial design and simulation? So a little bit more on the actual topic we are going to talk about in this workshop. So again, one, just getting started or maybe no experience, and five, very experienced. That's something you have done a lot already. And then the third question, have you used rpact before? So there we have a kind of a matrix here for you. So the columns, we have two questions. Have you used the package rpact before? And then have you used rpact Cloud before is the second column. And there you have the choice between no, haven't used it yet, or yes, a little bit, or yes, a lot. Okay, so please fill that in, and then we give you a few more seconds to submit that, and then we can hopefully look at the result, just to give us a little bit of idea who we are enjoying here the time with today. Okay, good. Let's maybe have a look at the results. What do you think, Phil?
That sounds great. Let me see if I can end the poll, if it will show the results here. Can you see those, Daniel, by chance?
How do we how do we bring them up? Do you
Oh, here they
know?
come.
Oh, great. Super. So, thanks so much, Phil. Okay, so great. So we have very equal distribution here for the experience with R. So that's very nice. So we have relatively even distribution between low and high experience. Then we have experience with clinical trial design and simulation, a little bit more right skewed here. So most people have low experience. There's a few people with a lot of experience. And then have you used rpact before? So the package, most of the people haven't used the package before. I just need to be careful to look at the right bars here. So 76% haven't used rpact before. On the other hand, 20% have used a little bit before, and actually 15% have used rpact a lot before. So that's also very interesting. So very cool to have some of the rpact users here with us today, and then have used rpact Cloud before. I think there we are missing a couple of responses, but also similar. There's nobody who has used it a lot. Yeah, that's kind of not surprising because it's really a new thing that Friedrich is going to talk about in detail later to you today. So I think it's going to be very exciting to see that as well. So thanks a lot for the poll, and thanks Phil for the impromptu help. Um, we really didn't practice this before, so happy that it worked out. Good. So a quick introduction by myself. So I'm a statistician. So I did my PhD in the University of Zurich in Switzerland, working on Bayesian model selection. Finished that in 2013 and started as a biostatistician at Roche for 5 years.
Daniel,
Then,
do you want to share your screen? I think you.
oh, is it gone again?
Yes.
Oh, I thought I shared. Sorry about that. Yes. Enter screen. Yes. Okay, but in the beginning it was shared, right? It was maybe just because of the poll. Okay.
We can
Good.
see.
Great. Thanks. Yeah. So just a few boring facts about myself here, um, but it's just going to be quick. So then I was at Google for 2 years. There, I really learned a lot about software engineering and working with actual software engineers. So I was happy to come back to Roche afterwards and was leading and built up the statistical software engineering team at Roche for 4 years. And then last year, middle of 2024, co-founded Arconis and also joined rpact as part of this collaboration. And also moved to Taiwan. So I'm dialing in today from Taipei. So it's already 9 p.m. here, but a good time, quiet time to do this workshop. And yeah, a lot of our experience. There's a book also, but we will talk about another much more important book later. And also, I'm also chair of Open Stats, where that might be interesting for you. That's a working group for statistical software engineering, primarily in the pharma industry. So happy to connect on LinkedIn or GitHub, or of course, you can have a look at arconis.com. Friedrich, over to you for a quick intro.
Yes. I'm a computer scientist by training and made my PhD in a biostatistics institute in Lübeck, Germany. I have been working as an independent consultant for computer science, data science, and biostatistics for many years. At the beginning, I mainly programmed in Java, but switched 8 years ago totally to R. But my R experience is much longer. I'm a R programmer since 2004 and Shiny developer since about 6 years. Together with Gernot Wassmer, I founded the company rpact in 2017. rpact is a company developing this formerly validated R package, rpact, which we are talking about today. Since 7 years, since the beginning, we released on CRAN 31 versions of this package. Same for me. Feel free to contact or to link via LinkedIn or GitHub if you like. Thank you. Hand over back to Daniel.
Thanks, Friedrich. And just a few more slides from me before you have the pleasure with Friedrich, much more. So a little bit more about, so Friedrich just mentioned rpact. So that's really the company, Friedrich and Gernot. Gernot is also here backstage if we have some very difficult questions later that we cannot answer, so he can help us there. But that's really, Friedrich and Gernot really built this package. Talking about Arconis, that's something we created as a brand to basically grow the scope from the single package to a wider range of services. So Arconis stands for Research Consulting and Innovative Solutions. And in particular, I have joined rpact team to really strengthen the maintainer team and just to be able to have a bit more hands on deck. As mentioned before, you can have a look at arconis.com if you want to know more. Especially there was in the summer, we had a little first birthday blog post where we talked about what else we have been doing in the first year of Arconis. So if that's interesting, please have a look. Here also the team. So you see me and Friedrich here. Then we have Gernot as well, and also Carrie is also part of our CONUS. So what you will learn today is 3 things. First of all, understand really the basics about rpact, where it is, how to get it, how to get information about rpact, how to learn more about rpact, all the links and references. Then get to know the graphical user interface, rpact Cloud. We will actually start with that because that also provides like an easy entry point. If you maybe haven't done a lot of clinical trial simulation yet, maybe if you're not super strong R programmer yet, then the graphical user interface can be like a good segue actually to the package. And then we finish with a large example, practical example of using rpact for clinical trial design, right? So that's really the plan for today. What you will need, not so much maybe for a live part. I think it will be a little bit hectic and a little bit stressful potentially if you want to follow all the code yourself. It might be possible if you go to the website with the materials. There you can also download the code. Again, that's this RFarmer presentation 2025 rpact.com website. That's in the chat. But I would recommend maybe sit back, relax, and try to understand a little bit the flow and the philosophy of the package, and then come back later when you have more time and digest the code examples and try it out yourself. So for that, you really just need rpact package. So just install the package as rpact in R with your own R installation. And then for the rpact Cloud, we have a little demo website, cloud.rpact.com. Don't immediately everybody go there because otherwise the server will crash. Okay, so this is really not, let's say, supposed to have like hundreds of users at the same time. So for that, I would recommend actually to go there later again yourself when you want to try it out, and then you can try it out yourself, and then not everybody goes at the same time. But that's really the kind of graphical user interface we will talk about later. Okay. So with that, handing over to Friedrich, and then Friedrich can also share his screen from his side so he can more easily navigate through the slides.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's start with our package rpact. We implemented 4 different modules in this R package. The first module is the trial design module. It can be used for fixed sample designs, the classic designs, for group sequential designs, and for adaptive designs using the inverse normal or the Fisher's combination test and conditional error rate principle. In our package, the implemented R commands are always easy to understand due to their names, as you can see here. So for example, if you want to create a group sequential design, just enter get design group sequential, and you will get a result immediately. The second module is a sample size and power calculation module, which can be used for the typical endpoints. That means for testing means, continuous endpoint for testing rates, that means binary endpoint, and for survival trials with flexible recruitment and survival time options. We can take a look on this later. And the newest feature in this module is for testing rates for count data. Same here for the commands. They are also easy to understand. For example, if you want to calculate the sample size for a survival endpoint, you have to enter get sample size survival, or for a continuous endpoint, get sample size means. And for power, it's in a similar way. And the third module is a adaptive analysis module for testing means, rates, and survival data. It can be used to, it always calculates adjusted point estimates and confidence intervals. And some highlights that I would like to mention here are the automatic boundary recalculation during the trial for analysis with alpha spending approach, including under and overrunning features. So this is a really nice feature. We have a vignette on this. So we'll come to the learning concepts and the vignettes later. And another highlight is the adaptive analysis tool for multi-arm trials and the analysis tool for enrichment design. Same here for the commands. They are also easy to understand. That means, for example, if you want to calculate the analysis for a clinical trial, you only have to enter get analysis results, and we only need two arguments, namely the design and the data. And the data must be brought into an rpact specific format using get data set. And that's all. Get analysis results automatically detects the endpoint and the number of stages of the data set and is calculating the results. And the fourth module in rpact is a simulation tool for means, rates, survival data, and also count data. It can be used for the assessment of adaptive sample size or event number recalculation strategies, for the assessment of treatment selection strategies in multi-arm trials, or population selection strategies in enrichment designs. The R commands always start with get simulation, and then depending whether you have a multi-arm enrichment or a base trial, you have this middle term in the command, and then at the end, as in the other commands, the endpoint specific suffix. So for example, a multi-arm trial for continuous data or for a continuous trial can be simulated with get simulation multi-arm means. So to summarize, rpact is a very useful tool for conducting flexible simulations in clinical trial planning. We have a special user concept in rpact. I would like to go step by step to the highlights of our user concept. So first, rpact supports the so-called R generics or generic functions. That means everything runs with the R standard functions, which are always present. So if you create, for example, a design with get design group sequential, you can use the print command, you can use the summary command to produce a detailed summary of the design, or you can create different plots using the plot command, or you can continue your work using as data frame, for example, to coerce your result to a data frame, or you can, for example, use names to identify the attribute names of the result object. Another important part of our user concept is that most parameters have a default value. So that is especially for beginners very helpful and useful. So for example, if you enter, after you have executed the library rpact, if you enter get design inverse normal, you directly get a result object. By default, the print output will be shown at the console, for example, in RStudio. And as you can see here, we have a title and then different areas in the print output. So here you can see a user-defined parameters area. In this example, nothing is available. Then derived, and then default parameters, and at the bottom, the output. And that means, for example, if you change the number of stages in this design, the default is always 3 in the package. Then you can, and when you set it to 2, for example, then you can see that in the output, the maximum number of stages move up to the user-defined parameters. That means it's very easy to see which parameters are defaults and which parameters are user-defined or derived from your user-defined parameters. Another important concept is that rpact supports pipe operators. In this example, I used the native pipe operator of R available since 4.1, version 4.1. But alternatively, you can also use the Magritte or dplyr pipe operator. And yes, so in this example, you can see we create a group sequential design with default parameters, and then we pipe it into the data set. And as data, we take the default data, which are available after loading rpact. So we have prepared some binary default parameters, data sets, which are available after loading. And then we pipe it to the get analysis results function. And we can see that we get this output shown here. So I think it's very easy. It's to read. That's a big advantage of the pipe operators. But alternatively, you can also use the classic way, putting the design, for example, into the get analysis function. Okay, so we have various learning concepts available to get started with rpact. So first you can book a training. So today you have a very general training. So, and if you are interested in very specific topics, for example, for a specific trial in your company, then you can ask us for a special training. The second way is to take a look to our vignettes, which are available online at rpact.org/vignettes. So if you click on it, you will be forwarded to this page. And at the right area, you can see we have different categories. In total, we have at the moment 29 different vignettes or tutorials. And you can pre-filter it based on your topic that you are interested in. For example, if you're only interested in survival trials, you can make a pre-filter here, and then you can take a look, for example, on the vignette promising zone design with rpact. Or if you are a beginner, then I would filter with the category getting started. And here you can see we have this nice step-by-step rpact tutorial. And here you will find a mix of graphical user interface examples and also rpact package examples. So this is a screenshot of the graphical user interface. And you have a nice introduction to our package and our graphical user interface. And the third way to get started with rpact is to use our graphical user interface, as already mentioned by Daniel before. So as Daniel mentioned already, we assume that the performance, the computing power will not be powerful enough for parallel processing of hundreds of people, because it's hosted, the demo version is hosted at ShinyApps.io from POSIT. But if you later go to it and give it a trial, I think it should work. And if you, I would like to mention here that at the moment, 3 pharmaceutical companies have a license to install rpact Cloud on their own servers. So they already installed it there, and then you have not this performance issue, I think, because most of them hosted on POSIT Connect. Okay, and there's another platform, rpact platform, that I would like to mention here. It's called rpact Connect. Same here regarding the performance. It's also hosted at Shiny Apps.io. So let's try it in a minute. So rpact Connect is a platform that collects all important information and resources about rpact on one dashboard. And especially if your company is a customer of us, and I think most European pharmaceutical companies and lots of US companies are already customers. And if you register at rpact Connect with your company email address, then customer-specific resources will be available. For example, you have access to training slides of the last years, the annual meeting slides, and the rpact validation documentation, which is also a nice handbook for the formulas and detailed descriptions of the methods inside of the package, implemented in the package. And furthermore, you can do an installation qualification on your environment if you want. So that's only for customers. And another advantage of using rpact Connect is if you jump from rpact Connect to rpact Cloud, you will have a little bit an advanced version of rpact Cloud. For example, you can send emails from the graphical user interface, or you have some more computing power enabled. You have a better or increased timeout. You have more iterations for your simulations and some other features coming soon. For example, we plan to deploy in the near future the opportunity to save designs and design comparisons directly in rpact Cloud. Okay, so maybe I can give it a try now, but I assume that it will not work, but let's try. So that is a default dashboard page of rpact Connect. And for example, here you can see the links to the slides of and recordings of our last annual meeting in October this year. And if you click on it, you can see access is restricted. Then you have to log in, and let me do it now with my rpact account. And after this, I hope it will not take too long now, because in the background, several jobs will be started to load the user-specific content and resources from different sources. And sometimes that may take some more time. And now you can see if we click, for example, here, the link is available. And you can see here that now it's named rpact Cloud Pro, not only rpact Cloud. You can copy and paste the command for the installation qualification, which is shown here below. And you can also download the validation documentation with all the details of the implemented methods. And some other advantages are here. And There are some more online resources available. Most important is the CRAN online resource. So here you can see the latest official release of rpact and some more information about it. For example, here on top here are some more links. And the GitHub pages are also a very good online resource because here the reference manual is available in a nice formatted way. For example, you can get all the details about the function getDesignedGroupSequential. And if you are interested in the print arguments, want to know which print or plots are, the plot arguments. So if you're interested which plots are available in rpact, I would recommend to first open the function and then click here to plot, because then you see the different plot types with a description in detail, for example. And there are some other resources. I don't want to now to go into the details, just want to mention rpact.org is a general package website. rpact.com is our company website. Yes, I think that's enough on this topic. And last but not least, for this part, I would like to mention that the brand new edition of the reference book is available since end of September this year in a print version and also for Amazon Kindle and other digital formats. So this is the basis, the base for our package. All implemented methods are described in this book. And the big advantage of this new edition, the second edition, is that there are numerous rpact code examples in this book now available demonstrating the methods. So for more information, you can use the Springer link. Okay, so this was part one, getting started, and now I would like to directly go ahead with rpact Cloud, the graphical user interface. I divided it into two parts, a basic introduction and a more advanced presentation on the advanced features of rpact Cloud. So first, short motivation. I mentioned it already. It's a general rpact Cloud onboarding today. And in part one, you will learn how to use the basic features, and in part two, the advanced features. So what is rpact Cloud? rpact Cloud is a graphical user interface that offers web-based usage without local installation of the rpact package on nearly any device. That means you can open rpact Cloud on your tablet, on your mobile phone, on a desktop, and so on. So it hopefully works on all devices. And it provides an easy entry to the rpact. Furthermore, it's a good starting point for your R Markdown or Quadro reports. If you are an experienced rpact user, I would say it's very useful to start with rpact Cloud to create a template for your further work. And it's also very helpful to learn or to demonstrate the usage of the package in a very user-friendly and intuitive way. We will see this in the next slides. So let's start with the basics. If you open rpact Cloud, you will see this screen. So on the left hand, we have a navigation menu. At the first start, you only see a start tab there. And when you open one or more designs, you will see additional tabs on the left in the navigation menu. In the middle, you have this Create New Design button. If you click on this, an abstract design without a defined endpoint will be created. That means you can make your basics definitions of your designs, for example, the alpha level, and can specify your endpoint later. But alternatively, you can use the quick start menu on the right. That is my personally preferred way, because you can make some pre-specification specifications. For example, you can specify, is it a classic fixed design or do you have interim looks? Here you can use choose between 2 or 3 looks and can later increase it if you need this. Furthermore, you can specify the endpoint. Is it a continuous endpoint, a binary endpoint, or a survival endpoint? And you can pre-specify the number of groups or treatment arms. And in the middle top, we have a button to hide the menu on the left. That is helpful if you have a small screen or a mobile device, then you can hide this. And on the right, you can switch to the dark mode of the app if you want. And in the middle, in the help menu, you can check the system status. For example, you can check if functional cookies are enabled in your system, and that is important. Or let's say it makes life easier if you open rpact Cloud again, your preferred settings will be restored using cookies. So it's important to know that we have no database and background at the moment, because I think for most pharmaceutical companies that would be an issue because of data protection and regulatory rules. They are very hard to implement for if you have a database and background. But we we tried to make life easier for example, using cookies, and we have also another approach using shiny bookmarks, which will be deployed, I hope, in the next month. So let's come back to the app itself. So why is it so helpful for learning or demonstration? Because you can very easily explore the available parameter levels of the package. For example, let's have a look or take a look to the type of design argument. If you are a beginner, and also for us as experienced users, it's often not so easy to remember which types of designs are available in rpact. And if you use rpact Cloud, it's very easy because you always have a drop-down menu for the different levels. And the drop-down menu contains always nice descriptions of the shortcuts. So in rpact, in the package, you need to enter OF as a character, but here you can see the explanation of OF, namely O'Brien and Fleming. Similar for the survival functions and accrual time options. So for example, we have many different combinations of survival function options, and with rpact Cloud, it's very easy to explore these parameter levels. Same for accrual time. There are also many different combinations of arguments available, and rpact Cloud helps to explore them. I already mentioned the user settings in context of the cookies. So you can make some different preferred settings in rpact Cloud, clicking on the icon on the right top. For example, there are some different output options, simulation options, and general options available. So let's come back to the quick start menu. For example, if you click on sequential 2 looks, that means we have a Kmax of 2 and you want to plan a continuous endpoint trial with 2 arms. You will see that you have 3 different options that you can perform in rpact. You can calculate the sample size, you can calculate the power, and you can simulate the power. If you switch to 3 arms, you can see that the sample size calculation and the power calculation is not available, only the multi-arm power simulation. Similar for other number of interim looks and endpoints. And let's go ahead with a specific example. A Kmax 2 trial with a continuous endpoint, 2 arms, and we want to calculate the sample size. If you click on it, then this tab will be opened, and you can see on top that we have 3 different tabs in this screen. First, the design interim stages, second, plan a trial, and third, reporting. In the design interim stages area, you have the abstract design parameters. That means endpoint independent design parameters. For example, you can specify the significance level or the type 2 error rate or the type of design. Furthermore, the information rates and the futility bounds can be specified here. And as you can see here in the middle, the corresponding R command is always generated immediately and displayed here in this menu. And if you switch to the reporting tab, then you can see that also a report will be generated in real time in the background. In the background, an R markdown file will be created containing this R command, and this document will be rendered immediately in HTML format and will be included in the user interface here. And in the Plan a Trial tab, you have some additional options. For example, you can later change the endpoint if you, for example, started with a continuous endpoint using the quick start menu on the start page, and then you decide you want to take a look to the binary trial version, then you can change the endpoint here. And after this changement, this menu will be hidden again for better user experience here. For all arguments, you have a help included here in the graphical user interface. So that means for each argument, you have this question mark icon. If you go with your mouse over it, a small pop-up displays the base information, the basic information about this argument. For example, here you can see the technical name of this argument. Technical name means that it will be used in the function call of the rpact function. If you click on it, a model dialog will be displayed with the rule help information, or this information is extracted from the reference menu, which is available at rpact at docs.rpact.org. But it's also available in rpact.cloud, in rpact Cloud. Okay. There's also a copy and paste feature implemented in the user interface. On the left, you can always copy the R command to the clipboard. If you click on the copy icon, if you click on it, you will see a small information that the copy process was successful, and then you can paste it, for example, to an R script file in RStudio and continue your work or use it as a template. But you also can directly copy the displayed results from the graphical user interface to the clipboard. This copy click will be also confirmed with a small dialog. And for example, you can paste it to a text file or a Word document or anything else. I already mentioned the output options. There you can, for example, switch between summary output, print output, or a combined summary and print output. And you also can choose your preferred pipe operator. So by default, it's a native pipe operator. But if you prefer the Magritte or dplyr pipe operator, it's no problem. You can choose it here and it will be remembered if cookies are enabled in your browser. Also, the removing of the pipe operator is possible, and you can see the corresponding command immediately. Another nice feature is that you can enable the default parameters in the R command. Sorry. So if you click on this, you can see that also the defaults will be added to the command here. And I think that's also helpful for learning, but maybe also if you make it, want to make it completely reproducible, what you have done with the package. Furthermore, you can enable in the options show statistics. And then at the bottom of your simulation, you will see some summary statistics of your simulations. Okay, so that was rpact Cloud Part 1. And now I would like to go ahead with the advanced features of rpact Cloud. So in this part, I will give you some examples how to create reports, how to export your results, how to create nice plots, and how to use our very flexible and powerful design comparison tool. First, let's go back to the reporting area. Here you can see you can add optionally one or more plots to your design or to your for example, your sample size calculation. And you also can see all available plots here for this specific configuration. If you enter, for example, these two plots, they will be added immediately to the report and will be displayed also in this rendered version in the graphical user interface. You have below this area, you have the download area, and here it's possible to download the design or the sample size or power calculation in 2 different rendered formats or in 3 different raw formats. So you can, for example, create an HTML formatted document, a PDF document, or you can download an R Markdown file, a Quarto Markdown file, or an R script or R document. Furthermore, if you logged in previously to rpact Connect, also the mailing feature is available. There you can click on, and a dialog let you choose whether you want to add rendered formatted reports or raw formats, or and you can make some other specifications. And if you click then on send, you will receive immediately an email in your inbox with the attached documents. So if you download a Quarto Markdown file, for example, as shown here, you can see this and open it with RStudio. You can see this typical structure with the YAML header and some attributes you can change. And then next, the setup of the working environment is entered or included in this document. And then the design section is added. And you can make some changes here and then just click the render button. If you have Quarto installed, it will be added to your RStudio automatically. And if you click render, then you see this typical Quarto formatted HTML output with is really nice looking, with a contents area and some other nice advantages. And this is a PDF version of the report that I downloaded from the app or rendered with RStudio. I already mentioned that rpact Cloud is also helpful to learn the different plot options. And here it's a little bit hidden, because you first, if you want to see the different plot types, you first have to click on this small gear wheels on top of the plot window. And then you have a drop down with the plot types. And here in this example, we see this node. Additional plot types are available for more than one alternatives. And this is a very helpful hint, because if you switch here on the left from 1 to, let's say, 2 values, then you have typically much more plot types available here. And I would recommend to start always with 2 different plot values and to specify a range here, because the big advantage is that rpact automatically calculates the interim values between the start value and the end value here. If you choose 3 or more values, only these 3 specified values will be used. And then you can expect that the lines will not be so smooth as shown here. So 2 values are recommended. Same behavior is in the package itself. So this is not a typical rpact Cloud advantage here. You can increase the window that's available. This feature is available at different areas here, as you can see. And if you do it with the plot, you have some advantages. For example, you can download the plot as a PNG file and include it, for example, in your report or in a Word document. And furthermore, you can explore with your mouse specific values on your curve here. So you can move your mouse and see the X and the Y value directly. And I think that's also nice. Here's another, let's say, hidden feature here. You can show the output as a table. If you click here on the small icon and then in the menu on show output as table. And if you do so, you have the option to export the table as an Excel spreadsheet. And this has the advantage that all information of your design will be added to this Excel spreadsheet. Not only the shown information in the table, also you get also a table of the design, you get a table of the design characteristics, you get a table of the sample size calculation, and some meta information will be added, which may be useful if you open it in 1 or 2 years and want to see which version, for example, of the rpact package was used to produce these results. And now we come to the design comparison tool, which is at the moment a graphical user interface feature, which is not available. So it's an exclusive feature, which is not available in the package itself. It allows to specify 2 or more designs. We call it master designs, or to create one design and mark 1 or more designs for comparison. And that means you can mark a specific situation. It will be freezed. And after this, you can change 1 or more values and mark it again, or can directly compare it. So in this example, I have one master design with 2 stages, maximum of 2 stages, and mark the first alternative of 0.25 for comparison. Then I changed this value, for example, to 0.31, make some more changes, and always click after the changement on the red heart here on top. I do it for 5 different situations. And then you can see here, there's a new tab, compare. And if you go to this tab, then you have a table including all the different values of your different situations. And furthermore, so in this table tab, you have some options. For example, you can export it to an Excel spreadsheet, to a CSV file, or you can export it in a binary data format and use it in RStudio. If you click on RData, then an RData file with the current date will be created and downloaded. And furthermore, a hint will be added to this window, namely use this command to access the data in R. And if you copy this, the command after this and paste it to RStudio, and change the file directory exactly to your download folder, or move the file to a specific to your working directory, then you will see, if you execute the command, that we have all the different situations now available in this design list, and you can make some further work with it. And you also have the comparison data as a data frame in R available, and you also can make some further work with it. For example, you can create your own plots. But before you create your own plots in R, I would recommend to give this tool here a trial, which is a very, very flexible tool to create your plots directly in the user interface. So that means you can specify an x-axis, a y-axis, and one or more categories here. And on the left, you have only the parameters visible, which are meaningful. That means they have 2 or more levels. And you also can see the parameter type here. For example, for alternative, we have a continuous numeric value. So that this information helps to decide which combination here in the middle makes sense or not. So nothing is forbidden here. That means you can create plots that are nonsense, that make no sense. So let's have a look to an example. On the x-axis, I specified the alternative. On the y-axis, I want to know how many subjects are necessary depending on the alternative. And as you can see, now it looks not meaningful. We have to specify a category first, and I chose stage here, and now you can see it makes sense. It means you can see here the red line is the number of subjects at stage 1 at the interim look, and the blue line is the number of subjects depending on the alternative at the final look. Okay. So here I would like to mention it's not possible to reopen the marked designs because they are stored in background in a binary format. If you need a very flexible comparison, of different situations, I would recommend to open different tabs here. But this is limited, I think, to 3 tabs. But here it's possible to delete one of these or one or more of these situations. So if you decide that you want to remove the alternative 0.31 here because you are no longer interested in, you can click on delete of design 2. And then go back, and you can see that it's removed immediately, and the plot and all other information are updated immediately. Here at the table overview, you have some further options. For example, you can transpose the table, or you can include the master design. Okay, so here I would like, before I come to the end of this part, I would like to mention that in the meantime, we updated the rpact cloud, and the table that for which I have the screenshots in the slides are now looking much better. So let me illustrate this just very quickly. This is the newest version. And let me produce some different alternatives here in real time, just for illustration. And now I go to the Compare tab. You can see that the table looks much nicer. It's much clearer. You have the values around it now, all parameters with just one level, parameter level, are removed by default. You can enable the display of all parameters clicking here, but by default you only see the meaningful values, and now it's much easier, I think, to see what the lines are meaning. So we have in the first two lines, we have the design 1, the next two lines design 2, then we have per design 2 lines per stage. Then you can see the information rates and some other values. So it's much easier to read now. And some of the options, for example, the rounding, were moved to the right in the comparison option area. And here you can make changes if you want regarding the rounding or anything else. That's what I wanted to show you here. Another advantage, if I delete the design and if I delete also the other designs, you can see here, now we have by default a help displayed here in this area, and the Compare tab is no longer hidden. And especially if you are not using rpact so often, I think it's very helpful to read here that you have two options to compare different designs. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Now I would like to hand over back to Daniel so that he can go ahead with the last part, rpact and rpact Cloud and practical use.
Thanks, Friedrich. Okay. Let me share my screen. And yeah, thanks for the questions. Please, if you can, put them in the Q&A tool, because that allows us to easily keep the questions and answers together. A little bit easier than in chat, but of course, if you have some chat messages, it's also fine. And I try to answer a few things in the meantime. And now Friedrich can take over for the Q&A in the chat. But here we are now continuing more with the package itself. Okay, so this will now be a part more about the package. I will also show briefly again rpact Cloud, but only briefly. So most of the stuff that you will see here is going to use the package as such, that you can just download from cron, freely open source. Okay, good. So, and actually, I will also say in the beginning, it's a relatively simple example. So maybe the people who are very familiar with clinical trial design and simulation and rpact, they might find it a little bit boring, but I think for everybody else, it's going to be a good introduction. So that's why we kind of deliberately keep it relatively simple, this example. Just trying to move the zoom bar a little bit somewhere that it doesn't bother me so much. Okay, I'm gonna move this here. Great. Okay, so the typical workflow, as Friedrich already showed you, is a little bit like this, so that we basically start with the first design kind of object. And Friedrich already showed you there's different kind of design objects. For example, you might want to use a group sequential design, so then you say get design group sequential. Then we need to find kind of the optimal design parameters, so kind of things like, standard deviation, maybe, or sample size, or what kind of interim analysis we are doing, and what kind of adaptive design parameters we might be using if we use, for example, inverse normal design or anything like that. For this, we will here show you how to do that with R and rpact, and then also a little bit with rpact Cloud. Then we can, of course, given these design parameters in the design, we can then calculate the required sample size and power, for example, here for the continuous endpoint case with get sample size means and get power means. So we will see that in the example. We might also perform simulations to confirm the operating characteristics, let's say without the asymptotic assumptions, so basically with finite sample size. Here we can do that, for example, here with get simulation means. We will also see that later in example. Of course, this is much more important if we have complicated adaptive designs, where the approximation, the asymptotics are maybe not that good, or maybe not available at all, because we have very complicated adaptation mechanisms. Then, of course, it's more important. Here we just show a simple example where it's not really necessary, right, with get simulation means, just to keep things simple. Okay, and then last but not least, as Friedrich also mentioned, we can also analyze data with rpact. So basically how to make, for example, decisions at interim analysis or final analysis. And we do this by first collecting the data, importing this into R, and creating a specific data set object. And then we can, at the end, analyze our data with get analysis results, which then automatically knows kind of what to do with the design and the data. Okay, so this is kind of the overall kind of workflow in rpact. Okay, so let's look at our example. It's completely, of course, a fictitious example. So we talk about some new antihypertensive therapy, so antihypertension, and as mentioned, primarily with rpact, a little bit with rpact Cloud. We might use some additional packages, but not very much so. Let's say we want to have here evaluation of the efficacy of a new antihypertensive therapy compared to a placebo in patients with hypertension. Okay, so what do we need to write down? So what's the endpoint of our clinical trial? So let's say it's the blood pressure reduction, right, from baseline to a specific time point. What kind of groups do we compare? We have our new treatment, or hopefully a new wonder drug where we can make billions of dollars, or we can help millions of patients, hopefully, right? That's even more important than the billions of dollars. So that's a new treatment. But then we have, of course, a placebo or maybe some other kind of active comparator that we need to compare against to make sure there's really an added benefit over that. Then the statistical parameters. So let's say we are in a kind of a confirmatory setting. So we typically need to have here one-sided alpha level of 2.5%, and typical power value, for example, 80% could also be higher, 90%. Then let's think what kind of assumptions do we need to make. So we need to know something about the patient's baseline level, right? So let's say these patients suffer from grade 2 hypertension. Not too severe yet, but also not too low grade. Let's say they start around 150 mmHg as systolic blood pressure here. So the objective is to significantly reduce blood pressure in the treatment group, while no substantial reduction is expected in the placebo group. But of course, there might be some placebo effect going on, so we need to adjust for that. Okay, so what are the expectations? So we expect that we want to see a difference in the systolic blood pressure change from baseline of 12 units. So this would be the difference in the mean reduction between the treatment and placebo groups. Okay, so we basically calculate the reduction in treatment group, we calculate the reduction in placebo group, and then we take the difference of these changes. So we want to see 12 units difference here. Of course, 12 units better for treatment than placebo. So more reduction, right? We also need to assume something about the variability of the change from baseline measurement. So here we assume a standard deviation of 15 units. So the first step, as mentioned in the workflow, after we make those assumptions, let's say we start with a simple fixed design, fixed sample size design, not with a group sequential design. And now we want to calculate the sample size. We want to achieve a power of 80% for detecting this 12 units difference in the change from baseline, assuming standard deviation of 15 units. So we will also see a nice feature, I think Friedrich already mentioned, that when we use the rpact outputs in our Markdown or quarter docs, then we get very nicely formatted results output right away. And you will also see this here in the slides, okay? So just to give you a feeling here, again, no need to rush to understand everything right away, but it's very simple and very easily readable, as Friedrich already explained. So we start with the design. I'm actually calling here get design group sequential, but I only say one analysis here. So it basically reduces it back to a classical fixed sample design because Kmax is the number of analysis. So just one analysis. Okay. Here I have my significance level. Here I have my 1 minus power, so my beta, my type 2 error, 20%. Then I say here one-sided test, so sided equal 1. Okay, so that's kind of the basic configuration of my trial design here. And then I only come in with the outcome scale. So basically now I'm talking about get sample size means. So we talk about a continuous outcome. Here I have a two groups case, treatment versus placebo, my expected effect size. So the alternative I'm powering for is 12 units and my standard deviation is 15 units. So here we assume a common standard deviation for treatment and placebo arms. Okay, so you see, and what I can do is I can basically start with my design and I pipe my design into my get sample size means and I get the sample size result. Now, when I just make a summary of the sample size result, which I can write in this kind of tidy verse way with a pipe, of course, I can also directly write summary of sample size result. I would probably prefer to do that as an old school R user, but this looks also very nice. And then because now we have here rendered this directly in Quarto, reveal.js slides, then we directly get this very nice output instead of just the R console printout. So we see here the results. So we see fixed sample size analysis, one-sided significance level. So that's all the input. All the inputs are here. And then we have the output, right? So we see, number of subjects 51. Okay, so that's the result. We also have a legend. We see the efficacy boundary on the treatment scale. So what does it mean? It means as soon as I observe an effect of at least 8.438, then my trial would be significant at the end. So that's kind of also sometimes called a minimal detectable difference. That's my efficacy boundary. Okay, so this is very nice. We have a first result. And now if I want to, for example, program further with this, the nice thing is also with this fetch function, I can now fetch corresponding details out of the sample size result object. Okay, so basically I want to know about the number of subjects here, and then I can find out, okay, I need to fetch the number of subjects fixed, and I get the number of fixed here. And you see 51 was a little bit rounded here, so maybe with 51 exactly, I will be slightly below 80% power, but if I want to make sure to have at least 80% power, probably I would go with 52. Okay, and that's anyway better because we can divide it by 2, because we have two groups. Okay, so this is useful with the fetch. Now we can also go the other way around. Let's say we want to calculate the power for a given sample size and vary some other parameters, just to explore a little bit for the team, how robust is this power given all these other assumptions that we are maybe not completely sure about, as it's always the situation. Right, so we want to verify the assumptions, confirm that the chosen sample size yields really 80% power, explore the outcome variability, so how does the power vary according to different assumptions. And we might also then adjust the study design based on these informations, right? So for example, if the results show that the power is consistently below the target, for some reasonable assumptions, we might need to increase the sample size or reconsider the assumptions. Okay, how does it work? Again, we're taking here First of all, let's fix the sample size. Again, I'm taking here the ceiling of the previous sample size. So this will be our 52, will be calculated sample size. And now I'm again taking my design, but now I don't put it into get sample size means, but I put it into get power means. Okay, because I want to calculate the power for a given sample size. So again, I say two groups, power for alternative of 12. That's my alternative hypothesis. Then I want to evaluate the power, and then I have here my 15-unit standard deviation. And then I'm giving here my 52 patients as the maximum number of subjects, right? So this would be my power results. Again, if I just do a summary of this, it looks like this. We have here now slightly more than 80% power, so 80.75%. We again have our legend here with the treatment effect scale, just to make sure that we understand what this T means, right? Of course, on the Z value scale, it's of course 1.96, which is the normal quantile. Okay, so the results show that, in 80.75% of the trials, the test successfully detects the true difference between treatment and control group regarding change of baseline. And now we can further explore possible adjustments, right? So how would we do that? What can we vary? What would be interesting? We can vary the effect size. Maybe 12 units is optimistic. We could also look at a smaller effect size, something like 10 units, to see how it affects the required sample size. Maybe 12 units is our target product profile. Maybe 10 is our minimal product profile or something like that. We could also vary the standard deviation. 15 units might maybe be again optimistic. Let's see how everything works out if we have 16 or 17 units standard deviation. How do we do this? Very easy with rpact. We can basically define a list of scenarios. Okay, so here I say, okay, I want to have different scenarios, and they are comprised of alternative values and standard deviations. Okay, so for example, here I have a reduced effect, only 10 units. I want a power for, but same standard deviation as originally. Then here I have reduced effect and a reduced standard deviation. Here I have a reduced effect, slightly reduced effect only, and so on, right? So we can also define here this kind of combinations of different parameters, which is pretty nice. And then we can run the calculations for each scenario. How do we do this? Easiest is like this. One way here like this. So let's say we pipe our scenarios into here, which is a list, right? So we can apply here, we can use here lapply on this list. So for each scenario, we want to basically get the power means, right? This is something we can do, and then we can just grab the corresponding alternative and standard deviation from our list element, because each element is again a list, right? So this is the second level of the list where we grab all the alternative and standard deviation, and then we get the power results, right? So this results will now be a list of all the scale power means results. And if we wanted to just look at the power, we can again run, for example, an apply over it and fetch always the overall reject result, which is the power, right? And this we can further, for example, here with the tidyverse, we can further work on this. It's a list, so we can bind all the rows together, rename things here to power, make it a data frame, choose some nice row names, and then make a nice table out of it using here the cable function. And voila, there we are. So with this relatively easy boilerplate code, we have this nice table that we can see for all the scenarios. We can see the resulting power. Of course, we could also round these power numbers further if this is a bit too much information, right? And we see how this behaves. So we are, let's say, minimum here 65%, maximum something like 82%. This is kind of the power range we are at with these scenarios. So we could interpret this and say, okay, base scenario, that's okay. That we know that already if the smallest worst case is kind of 65%. If we just have an increased standard deviation, we get down to 70% with power. So we can insert into this whether this makes sense. We can discuss it with the clinical team and so on. right? So then we might say, okay, clinical team often likes to have a larger treatment group to make the trial more attractive for patients. So we want to explore those scenarios as well, assigning more patients to the treatment group than to the control group. So this would allow more patients the potential benefit of the new therapy while still maintaining a control group for, of course, for reliable statistical comparisons. We still have a nice randomized trial. And how do we do this in rpact? Very easy. There's an allocation ratio planned argument. So we can specify this ratio. Okay, again, we come back to our scenarios. Let's first define them. Let's say we have a base scenario with 1-to-1 randomization. We have a 2-to-1 allocation and a 3-to-1 allocation. Okay, and the design still looks like the same as before. And now we change here our scenarios list where we vary the allocation ratio. And then we can apply our little bit boilerplate code here to basically always vary here this allocation ratio planned in our get power means function. Okay. And you see I'm fixing here maximum number of subjects at 50. Just to make it here a little bit more easy to read. Okay, now we can fetch the power again and see what we get. So this is what we get. So our base scenario, we have the 80% power, and then we, of course, slightly reduce here the power with unequal allocation ratios, right? So let's assume the team says, okay, we definitely want to go with 2-to-1 allocation. So we're in scenario 2 here. What do we do with that? We have seen the reduction in power, only 74% power. Maybe the CEO is not happy with that, or the clinical team leader. So let's say we can maybe help a little bit here with the group sequential design with an interim analysis, okay, instead of just simply increasing the sample size with this fixed sample design. Okay, so how does it work? For those who never seen that, so basically the idea is after enrolling a number of patients, a part of the patients only, then we conduct an interim analysis. So what could happen, right? If the treatment shows significant efficacy already at this interim analysis, the study can be stopped early and we can avoid additional recruitment. So we can get the information more quickly and need less patients for our study potentially. If efficacy is not yet demonstrated, of course, we would proceed to the full planned sample size. Okay, so how do we do this with rpact? Very easy, of course. So let me start again with the fixed sample size design. Okay, I'm just repeating this here again, just to illustrate this again. So we first calculated the number of subjects fixed with a fixed sample size design. That's why we have here our Kmax equal 1, just one analysis. And then we calculate the sample size, fetch the number of subjects, take the ceiling, and we are at our 58 now. So why it's now 58? Because again, we have this allocation ratio planned as 2. So we had 52 patients before with 1-to-1. To get 80%, now we need 58 with allocation ratio 2-to-1 to get to 80% power. That's why we have now 58. But let's say how it works when we do our group sequential design with an interim analysis. Again, the first analysis will occur after enrolling a number of subjects, and the final analysis will be at the full sample size. And we need to determine this number by exploring so-called different information rates. The information rate is here very simple. It's just the percentage of patients where we have seen the endpoint. Okay. So how would we do this? Let's have a quick look at rpact Cloud, how we'll do this, because this is a typical case where it can help. So I'm going to show you again some screenshots here, just to link back to what Friedrich showed you before. So we would start here with the start page of rpact Cloud. Then we will click here on the right-hand side. For example, we want to look at the power for means with 2 looks and 2 groups. So we can directly click here on this power here. That's a kind of a quick access. Of course, we could also start from scratch with create new design and so on, but this is a kind of quick access. Then we would say, okay, we want to plan the trial. Right, we put all our start design stuff here. So in particular, we would say we want to calculate the power for 2 groups. Allocation ratio is still here at 1, but of course we can change this now to 2. Right, we change this here to 2. Then we specify also the other things. Effect is 12. No, we just look at one effect value, so the number of values is 1. Then we have 15 unit standard deviation. And here we have our 58 number of subjects as a maximum, right? And here we already have this maximum of 2 looks, right? This was further this was basically defined already before, but we see this here with this kmax equal 2, also here in the output, right? And here we have this two stages, right? We can already see that. And yeah, this is what I just mentioned exactly. And now we can look more specifically how we design our interim stages, okay? So now you see before we were here in this planner trial tab in the middle. Now we go to left tab, design interim stages, okay? I can click on that and we can now vary things a little bit. Right here we have the number of stages 2. But now, for example, we can also change here, do we want to use inverse normal design or group sequential design? We can change that. We can change the information rate. Right here it was 50%, but we can also set it to 60% or something. We can apply the changes to obtain the right boundaries. And if we are happy with one design, we could then, again, as Friedrich also showed you already, we could put this little heart on it. So we like to kind of save this design for later comparison. And then we can vary the information rates. Okay, so now I'm doing something here with 70%. I click the heart again, so I have another design saved, and so on and so on. So save a lot of designs. Then in the end, click here on compare designs on the left-hand panel here. I can look at the table, and as Friedrich already showed you, this is an old screenshot, but because rpact Cloud evolves so quickly, so now it already looks much better. But the bottom line is we see kind of the results here. And if that looks a little bit confusing still, then I think we also can look at some plots exactly. So we can see here, information, when we vary the information rate on the x-axis, and we look at the power on the y-axis, and we can also compare here the different number of stages. Of course, if we just have, if we just look at the first stage, then basically, we see something like this, that at certain information where we kind of have a minimum kind of power at the interim, whereas at the final kind of it's more or less always similar, around 80%, right? So we can look at all kinds of sensitivity of power here, looking at different stages, looking at different other things. So it's pretty powerful, this plotting utility here in rpact Cloud, I would say. Okay, and for example, we can also look at expected subjects, right, for different information rates. So all kinds of things we can explore here is quite nice. But of course, coming back, here, sorry, I have one more. You can also look here. Where was it? Early stop. I think this was basically the chance of early stopping. Okay, yeah, but it looks similar. So let's come back to R. Here's how we can set this up with R. So maybe we don't want to go in the cloud. Maybe we're already familiar and experienced enough with R. So first, again, we would define this list of scenarios. That's kind of a nice boilerplate approach we can use. Different information rates. Then again, for each for each of the scenarios, we would plug in the kind of information rate coming from our scenario here as the first element of this information rates vector. And of course, the last one is a defined analysis, so 100% or 1 information rate. Here I'm using group sequential design with O'Brien Fleming boundaries. And then I would here calculate my power according to this fixed number of subjects, fixed at 58. Okay. So this is how I would do this. And again, I can reduce further this results list, for example, by fetching the expected number of subjects and the early stop probability, and then put it into a nice kind of table format, and then kind of appreciate that obviously if I increase the information rate from 50 to 90%, so then my early stop probability can go up, right? because 90% of the full number of patients is not that early anymore. So basically 70% of my power, 71%, I can already realize that is 90%. Whereas if I'm only looking at the half of the patient's outcomes, then I only have 20% probability of this early stopping, right? So in this example, let's say we decide to use information rate 70% because the expected number of subject is here lowest with this, just below 50. And the probability for an early stopping is almost 50%, so it's not too bad already. Okay, so that's kind of a trade-off question here. Good. So let's say we do this. So we fix now our information rates at 70% and 100%. Now we basically go the other way around. Now I'm saying I'm fixing this, and now I want to compute the sample size such that I'm reaching really 80% power overall. Okay, so this is the kind of idea now. And if I'm doing that, I kind of confirm that overall I need, just shy of 59. So so the question is now, do we really want to go with exactly at least 80%? Then we would need to go with 60 patients, right? Because we have, 60 would be divisible by 3. So we would be able to have this 2-to-1 allocation, and we would have at least 80%, or if we are okay with slightly below 80% power, then we could maybe go with something like 57 patients, right? So that's the question here to discuss with the team, but we see of course, 70% of this is for this year, this 40.7. And we see some other interesting numbers here. So for example, the efficacy boundary at interim, right? So that would mean if at interim I see an effect of at least 12.5 units, I could stop already at interim. This is also kind of aligned with the kind of the target. So maybe it's not a bad story here for this design. Okay. This is again how to fetch things. I think we saw it already. Okay, I think just to confirm again, let's say we stay now with this what we just said. So we stay with the allocation ratio of 2-to-1. We stay here with our ceiling of this was probably this what we just get before here, right? No, but this is under alternative. This is under the alternative. Yeah, sorry. This is maybe I can mention that. This is basically the expected number of subjects under the alternative. So basically, if it's really true and I have this 12-unit effect, then I'm expecting on average about 50 patients. So that's kind of what this means. But here we're basically going again the other way around for a fixed sample size, fixed allocation ratio. I want to calculate the power. So we've done this now a couple of times. It looks still more or less the same. And I'm here ending up with just above 80% power. Although here, of course, 59 is not really divisible by 3. So maybe I would rather go with 60 patients probably here. Okay, now let's say this is all nice and bright, but let's say we want to add a futility analysis. So futility analysis basically means if we want to stop early as well if the thing is not working as we expected, right? Not just if everything is rosy. So let's say we want to do that and we want to have a clinically relevant threshold for this futility analysis. So for example, we could assume it makes no sense to continue the analysis when the observed treatment effect is 5 units or even less, right? So then we say, well, there's probably no chance whatsoever that at the final results, this will work out still positively. Just a note here, of course, the minimum futility bound should be 0 and not kind of even lower than that, because otherwise the effect could even go in the wrong direction. So then it's probably even, much too low futility boundary. Okay, so let's say we discuss with the team and then we say, okay, let's go for a boundary of 2 units on a treatment effect scale. Okay, so team says, let's do a futility. And if we see anything less than 2 units improvement with the new treatment compared to comparator, then we want to stop. So how do we implement this in rpact? let's say we put again some scenarios here for this fertility bounds, but this is now on the Z scale. Okay, this is important to know here. So this fertility bounds by default is on a Z scale. We're currently adding some new functionality to rpact to make that even easier, by the way. This whole story here about fertility bounds, but that's coming up in a very soon version of rpact. Currently, we don't have that yet. So currently, we have this on a Z scale. Okay, the question is, of course, what kind of treatment effect scale these Z values correspond to. But let's say we just try different Z-scale fertility bounds, right? And we always can put this in our get design group sequential using this fertility bounds argument. And then see what we get when we look at the sample size as well. Okay. So, and then we can also fetch the fertility bounds on a treatment effect scale. So this is kind of the main thing we want to do here. I'm going to just kind of translate the fertility bounds on a Z scale to the fertility bounds on a treatment effect scale. And then we see, okay, -1 corresponds to -5, and so on. 0 corresponds to 0, which makes sense. And then we have something here, 0.5, which corresponds to 2.5. So somewhere the Z value below 0 and 0.5 must correspond to a treatment effect scale boundary of 2, right? So how do we find that one? We could do some kind of root finding exercise, okay? So you might be familiar with the stats uniroot function. That's basically allows for this one-dimensional root finding, and we can search an interval from a lower to an upper bound for a root of a function. So basically for where a function crosses 0, okay? So in this case, we could do like this. We could say, okay, I know that for a given Z-scale fertility bound, okay, maybe we should have called it Z, but okay, it's X here, doesn't matter. We can calculate our fertility bound and treatment effect scale. This is basically all this code here, right? And then I'm just subtracting this here from my required sought after boundary treatment effect scale 2. And this function should be 0 in my, and that's a function of my Z value fertility bound. Okay, so I can just throw the whole thing into uniroot and look at what I get. And here I get something like around 0.4, right? So this is one way to do it. Another way to do it, just to mention, of course, in the continuous outcome case, everything is nice and easy. There's even a closed form approximate solution here, where we could also get to around 0.4. Okay, just a side note. So let's say I have my bound, okay, fertility bound I have. Now I can again calculate my sample size, and this is what I'm getting as a summary result then. So here is my fertility boundary as 2 units, as approximately 2 units as I wanted at my 70% interim analysis. And I can see here now interesting probabilities. So for example, if I'm really under the null hypothesis that there's no difference, I can already exit at with 66% probability. I will basically not cross this 2 units. So that's pretty good. On the other hand, if I'm in the alternative case, so I really have 12 units difference already in about 51% of the cases. I can also declare here early efficacy because I will cross this 12.5 units. So that's kind of nice. And then of course the other way around, we don't want to declare efficacy under the null. So that's pretty low here. That's good. And we also don't want to, that's very important, of course, for the team. We don't want to declare fertility if we are actually under the alternative. It's only 2.5% here. So that's also very low. So I think this looks quite okay. And we can also make some plots for this, of course, if we want. There's different kind of plot types we can use here, where we have here fertility bound, which is of course non-binding, as is always recommended, and the critical value here. So critical value here on the top, of course, and the fertility bound here below. And this is now here on on the Z value scale again. So you see here our 0.4 from before, and at the end here we have something just above the 1.96 because we spent some alpha here at the interim. Okay. This is also how we can do it, of course. We can also look at this a little bit larger, exactly. So that's all nice. Just looking at the time, so I'm gonna go relatively quickly, but we can also do simulations. Of course, we could skip here because it's all easy and nice with the continuous outcomes. Just to make sure that you take away that we can also do a lot of simulation studies with rpact. And this is especially important if we have non-normal endpoints or adaptive designs where closed form solutions are not always available. Okay. So let's say, how do I do this? Very easy. I again start from my group sequential design. And then as Friedrich already explained to you, we have this get simulation blah, blah, blah function. So in this case, get simulation means, okay? And what I want to simulate here, what I basically said before already, and I just need to add here two things. How many simulations do I want? And what's my random number generator C to make this reproducible later on, right? And then this runs super quickly, of course, in this case anyway, but rpact is generally very fast with simulations. And we get the result. And again, we have a very nice summary table here, which is almost looking the same as before. We have a couple of additional things here, which is quite nice. So for example, we have here some cumulative power mentioned. We have here some stage-wise number of subjects mentioned. So it's very, very easy to read. And just to the interpretations, for example, we can confirm that the cumulative power under the alternative, I mean, under the null, so this means alternative equals 0. So this is basically our type 1 error. We can confirm that this is really controlled at 2.5%. It's only 2.1% actually. Okay, so we are relatively conservative with this trial here. We can see that the power is here at 12 units, alternative is 81%. So definitely above the 80%, which is nice. We can also confirm that around half of the trials would already stop successfully at the interim under the alternative of 12 units. Okay, that was simulation. Very, very quick. There's much more which we cannot show now, but please have a look later at all the materials. And also, so takeaway, you can do sample size calculation, power calculation, and you can, of course, do simulations. And of course, you can also then analyze your data sets. Okay, this is the last part. So there's also some example data we provide you. And let's say we have this blood pressure trial now conducted. So we have some subjects in our two treatment arms, and we have some baseline blood pressure and some follow-up blood pressure after at the final analysis time point, let's say, I don't know, 3 months or something, right? And we see, okay, some patients going down, some patients going up, and so on. So how do we now analyze this? Of course, we first kind of need to calculate the primary endpoint. So we calculate, for example, for each patient, first of all, the change from baseline. And then, of course, we compute by treatment group. We compute the average change from baseline and the standard deviation of the change from baseline and all of these things that we need for our summary statistics. We can, of course, plot this with ggplot or anything else that you want. And then we create an rpact dataset. And this is where I go a little bit slower again. So basically, we start with our summary statistics. So for each group, we have the number of patients, the mean change from baseline, standard deviation of change from baseline. Then let's say here, this is at interim. So it's all at stage 1. Now we just need to make this into a wider format. We use pivot wider. Such that rpact can read this now with get data set. Okay, so then we plug this into our get analysis results together with our design. Here, very important, we need to set direction upper equal false because we want to show that reduction is a good thing here, right? And here we Also put in here the allocation ratio planned as well. What else do we see here? Yeah, so this is basically what we can do. Okay, and then we get basically the result, right? So now we basically see very important things. So we see, for example, okay, what's my effect size, the observed estimated effect size? Minus 9.75, okay. That's already not bad. My put standard deviation is 15 point something, so pretty much in line with what I assumed before. That's also nice. And my p-value is 0.0281. So this is not yet crossing here my stage level one-sided p-value of 0.0082. So it's not low enough. So my test action would be here to continue to try to define analysis, right? So this is already very, very nice. Okay, and then let's say we have final analysis. We have also the second stage looks here in this now complete data set. And then we could calculate things. Here, just a quick note, we could also use the means package to calculate things. So there's, of course, various different ways how we can calculate these simple summary statistics. I will not go into the details here, but this all kind of works nicely together. Here, just a quick note that standard deviation could look slightly different depending on the method you use. For example, for dplyr, we have here this group-wise standard deviations, whereas for e-means we would have a pooled standard deviation. But in this case, it wouldn't make a difference for use of rpact. Okay, let's say then we have now this final result of the final analysis. We would have this. So again, we had this result already before interim. Now we also have the final analysis result. We have here cumulative effect size minus 10.9. And our overall p-value here is 0.005. So this is this is not below our stage-wise p-value 0.0223. So we would reject the null hypothesis. So the trial would be statistically significantly positive here. Okay, so everybody would be happy. Okay, so this is what we can do. Also, very important here, what we also get for free from rpact, which is not standard in many software packages. We also get things like repeated confidence intervals, repeated p-values, and also median unbiased estimate, which is slightly different than the raw kind of estimate, which is very important because this is unbiased. So this is also important for many regulators. They are starting to emphasize also that we need to report these kind of outcomes of our group sequential trials. Okay, so you get this all for free from rpact. So with that, we have 5 minutes left for some more Q&A. Any questions that we should go through? I see a lot of questions already answered. Thanks a lot. Let me just see if there's some more questions. Didn't notice model specification. Is baseline value included as a covariance model? Yeah, very good question. So this model here was very simple. We don't have covariance yet here in this analysis. Okay, so there's not a covariate adjusted analysis, but we will. We are planning to enable covariate adjusted normal outcome at least analysis in a version relatively soon in rpact. So that's on the roadmap already. Yeah. Any other questions that would be interesting? Let me see. Anything you noted, Friedrich, that we should discuss?
Maybe we can mention again that the validation documentation is available at rpact Connect, but only for our clients, and you can check very easily if your company is already a client when you register with your company email address. And if your company is already a client, then the validation documentation with all the formulas and methods is available for download immediately. That was one question, just to repeat this again.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and just to mention again, you have all the materials from today available at our Pharma Presentation 2025 rpact.com. It's a few dots here, but I think we put it now quite a number of times in the chat, so I think everybody got this. There you see all the slides that we used today, and you can also see all the code. So we extra kind of extracted the code here, so you can just download directly. It is here, and then you can work with that yourself and go through the examples one by one, right? I think that's important. And as mentioned, I think there's a lot of rich resources on rpact.org. In particular, all the vignettes, which are completely freely available here. And there's some additional ones for customers, but most of them, I mean, majority is actually here, everything open. And you can learn a lot about rpact by looking through these vignettes, and you can very nicely search here through the vignettes. I always love this quarto search functionality. It's very nice. Yeah. Okay.
And maybe there were lots of very specific questions in the chat, and this was just an introduction to our package and the graphical user interface. So reach out in a separate way if you have very specific, tri-specific questions.
Yes, and you can also find, we have here some contact information on rpact.org. Of course, info at rpact.com is our email, or if you have specific package-specific questions, of course, you can go to github.com. I think I also put this already in the chat. There's our rpact GitHub repository. You can put also questions or problems or anything here as an issue, and we will try to get to that as soon as we can. Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. I hope you had as much fun as we had. And back to the hosts, maybe.
Yeah, I just want to say a huge thank you to Daniel Friedrich for such a great workshop. The workshop will be available, will be available in a couple of weeks, probably about 3 weeks. And all the information as well, all the links shared. So once again, thank you so much for such a great workshop. Really appreciate it. It's a great way to pick up our farm. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And don't forget, lots of other workshops coming up today, tomorrow, Friday, throughout the week. Also the APAC. I don't know if you want to do a quick plug for the APAC track, Daniel.
Yeah, sure. So if you're in the Asia Pacific region, tomorrow we're starting the APAC track. Tomorrow 10 a.m. GMT +8. So yeah, looking forward to see maybe some of you there. I think for Europeans and Americans, it might be a little bit wrong time, but that's why we extra made the effort to put up this APAC track with lots of exciting talks also tomorrow and Wednesday. And then we have some keynote streamings from the global track also on Thursday, Friday. We have some workshops on Thursday on tidy models and also on Oak STTM creation, which is also great. So lots of interesting material on APAC. Thanks.
So much. So once again, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for a great workshop. I'm going to close the brief now, but remember there's plenty of other workshops through the day today. Thank you.